liked it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Hopefully we are going on.
All right. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So excited that you all are here joining us. I'm with Dr. Caroline and just the Light Effect Live with Dr. Caroline Williams with Native Sun Nutrition, fantastic functional medicine doctor. You can follow her on Facebook. You can find her website. It's all Native Sun Nutrition. So definitely check her out there. Check her out on Instagram. So great way to get fabulous information. She's always posting fabulous information about your health. So tonight, what I just thought we could talk about is you and I have access to this amazing technology that we are helping people with, just basically like the fountain of youth, restoring GHK copper peptide. And so when that's supported in the body, all of the things that can happen are truly remarkable. I mean, I had increased energy, help with pain, reduction in inflammation. There were so many things like that that happened. But I feel like the detoxification aspect of what's going on with our bodies is so important. And understanding that detoxification in your body is a natural body process that needs to work. It needs to work properly, and you want it to work properly. And just because you have some type of detoxification reaction, which truly can be anything, that's actually a good thing. You may need to go slower, take things
Right.
slower, but the fact is that you need to move in that direction because your
Mhm.
body has something it's holding on to that it has not been able to move. But then you utilize a technology that gives your body the ability to be balanced and work properly. Then that's what it wants to do is detoxify. We're constantly exposed to all of these toxins, pollutants, just truly, all kinds of different things. And so just wanted to talk about the importance of detoxification and try to help people, uh, change their thinking, about how important detoxification is. And normally, when we have some type of, symptomology, we potentially go to a doctor and we get a medication for that. When our body may truly just be trying to detoxify something, especially if you're doing something in the natural realm to support your body own detoxification processes. So one of the things that I had happen when I started using the technology was basically, I mean, I just had a headache, which meant I needed to drink more water, right? So we talked about last week about how important hydration is and the technology needing to support, and we need the hydration to support the technology. So, a lot of times headaches are going to be a detoxification reaction, but a reminder and a body signal and clue that we need more hydration.
Yeah. I mean, detoxification is a broad subject. It's interesting because I feel like the main thing that I would want to do in the short time that we have is frame the mindset around detoxification and set people up for success in how to think about that. Um, it's interesting because a lot of people, like you said, can misinterpret feeling sick and they think it might be a virus or something of that nature, and it's really detox symptoms.
Mhm.
And their body's going through like a healing crisis, and it's trying to detoxify, and they're symptomatic as a result of that because their cup is just running over with, so much toxicity. People today definitely are not consuming the things that really support detoxification on a regular basis. So that's not happening. There's some interesting things. I see a lot of marketing, and I see a lot of marketing and products that are created to support methylation. But what's interesting is methylation can be supported by specific nutrient for specific foods. And those people just need to be eating those foods, honestly, rather than taking some kind of synthetic supplement, right? That's been altered in some way. And that's my personal opinion because those foods, support not just one thing, but they support many things, right? Detoxification is just one of those things. And I'll just use an example. And this relates also, it's something that you would have to do for the technology, one of the patches to work properly. And that is the foods that are in the cruciferous family. So, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, the cruciferous vegetables, kale, things like that are really support what we call phase 2 detoxification in the liver. And you also need that though to provide N-acetylcysteine to help you produce more glutathione. And so this technology, when you put it on, it actually has been shown to increase glutathione production by up to 300%. It's a non-transdermal technology, so it's not putting anything in your body. It stimulates your own production of these things, which is ideal. And so when you put it on, it will do that. But you also have to be consuming these foods for it to effectively do that. You need a source of N-acetylcysteine as well to have what you need to do that, So anyway, but just to kind of provide some awareness, I actually was creating something today for education purposes that, you'd certainly want to have a strategy of decreasing your exposure to toxins. But then you also need to have in your strategy a way to help you eliminate them effectively. So if you really want to be healthy, right, and to support that elimination, and our ancestors, in my opinion, did it. Well, they had less exposure too, but they were definitely eating things that a diverse diet that no doubt supported detoxification in comparison to how a lot of times we eat today. Even though we have this knowledge, people are not really doing that consistently, but it's huge. And if somebody were to incorporate detoxification in their life on a quarterly and or biannually basis, it could decrease the potential for cancer and heart disease by 50%.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
that's
crazy.
significant. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why you want a strategy, right? And a lot of people will do things reactively, and I get that, but we've talked about that before. At some point, you want to start being proactive. And
Absolutely.
yeah, there doesn't necessarily need to be anything wrong for you to take this approach where your health is
Mhm.
concerned. It's only going to benefit you. And not only is it going to prevent those kind of major illnesses, but it could really be a game changer in just how you feel. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Like your
Yeah.
quality of life, like you're just going to have your metabolic function is just going to be so much more efficient. You're going to have more energy. You're going to, just a lot of times people just their vitality is better. That's one thing I will say. Like in today's world, there's so many things that you can do that can kind of delay the appearance of aging, but you cannot fake vitality. That is not something that can be faked. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Yeah.
right. And so that's something that I noticed with people that I've watched age over, the years, like somebody like Suzanne Summers. Remember Suzanne
Mhm.
Summers? She
Yeah.
passed away recently, but man, I remember her being in her 50s and 60s, well, and even 70s until she passed. And just her vitality was just so amazing. I was very impressed with her vitality. Um,
Absolutely.
and she was actually integral in David Schmidt making the glutathione patch. Did
Hmm.
you know that? Well, no, and
I didn't.
The Eon
Yeah.
one too. Yeah, she really, I think she's the one that inspired him to make the Eon because I think they were talking about some of the major issues that people are dealing with that contribute to illness. And she said stress, like you need to make something for stress.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, it's funny
Yes.
thinking about her, but she is one of the people that I thought of when I think of vitality. And so yeah, you want to have a strategy for helping eliminate toxins. And
Mhm.
you could be eating those foods. and using light therapy to help you, certainly. But there's really no substitute for that, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just the fact that, the constant assault of toxins that we're under is just truly um jaw-dropping, to the effect of that if we're not pursuing optimal health, if we're not actively, working on detoxification, working on nutrition, working on exercise, then it's crazy. I mean, I often compare it to, basically, you just continue to, if you just keep hitting yourself with a baseball bat, well, nothing is ever going to get better, because you're just constantly injuring yourself. So, so like, even like, people who continue, to smoke, like, even to use the technology that we have, but they continue to have massive assault, toxic assault on the body. It makes it very difficult for those detoxification pathways to work. So I was actually speaking with someone today who, she's been using the technology for quite some time now, and just getting teeny tiny little bits of results, definitely help with pain when she had it. But the other health issues she was having, I was thinking maybe, because sometimes medications can slow things down, because again, there's toxins associated with medications. So I was thinking it was potentially from that. Well, she ended up going to a biologic dentist, finding out that she had a root canal tooth that was infected and causing issues. And so once she got an implant and got that all cleaned out, taken out, like all of her symptomology around her kid, she was in like stage 3 kidney disease. And
Yeah.
once it was associated with that in particular tooth that had a root canal in it, she got the root canal, removed, cleaned out, infected area cleaned out, used ozone, biologic dentistry, using all of those really great things. And now her kidney health is fantastic. I mean, she was literally like the patches, just teeny tiny bits, just barely, helping, not have the kidney disease get worse, basically.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think about asking, or even, thinking about asking someone if they have any root canals. Like, if they're not seeing results with the technology, what areas in your body could be potentially causing constant assault? Like, even people with breast implants, like the same kind of thing.
Well,
Like
it's
that.
different. I will say this. Okay. So if you have a chronic cavitated sequestered infection, that is different, in my opinion, than toxicity, and it might show up differently. And I would just say that because I've had patients that was the case. But there were signs, but their doctors weren't picking up those signs. And so they had the infection for a long time. Like I
Mhm.
had somebody come into me and she was having nystagmus, where your eyes just go back and forth and you can't focus. So she was having some neurological issues, and she had all this pressure in the side of her head and her ear and all that. It was just affecting the quality of her life so bad. She said she couldn't even really watch TV or do anything like that. So through the investigation and the evaluation, we saw that she ended up, as you mentioned, she had a cavitated infection behind a tooth. When they went in there and they finally took everything out, it literally had been there so long it ate through the bone. It destroyed her bone. So they had to go in and do some bone grafting and different things. But yes, in short order, once they removed that infection, things took off. Like as far as her healing, finally, that was relieved. Finally, the body could heal itself effectively. Yeah, it's crazy how much how frequent that you could find those things. And some of the markers, a lot of times, that are like they just act like they're not a big deal, is a high C-reactive protein, a high CRP, which is chronic inflammation. Because most people probably know nowadays that if you have an infection in your mouth, in your gum lining, it will get into your bloodstream and it will affect your cardiovascular system. And so you could end up with it can contribute to cardiovascular disease, you know.
Mhm.
So it's a big deal. It's not a minor thing. It can spread and then cause issues other places, you know. So it's
Absolutely.
important, yeah, to address those things. So that's why a C-reactive protein, which is a cardiovascular inflammatory marker, would be high with an oral, infection,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, but a lot of practitioners don't always check that, and they don't always pay attention to it if it's elevated. It doesn't necessarily mean that a high CRP is guaranteed to be that. I mean, I've seen that with food allergens too. It's raised that depending on the food allergen, usually like with a wheat allergy. But if it's very high, and then you've got ESR that's high, and you've got, if the white blood cell count could be actually either slightly elevated or low. You can have chronic infections can correlate with a low white blood cell count. So, that's where sometimes, practitioners can miss that as well. But it's hugely important because, again, if it goes untreated, you could end up with a systemic issue.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty major.
So
But
interesting. I think I'm trying to remember. I don't know if even in, some of the functional medicine doctors and things like that that I've worked with, if that's even like a question on their form. Do you have a root canal or have you had a root canal? That would be like a really great question,
yeah,
to have on that intake form to know whether someone has had a root canal tooth because, it may not be causing problems at that in particular, point in their life, but especially if you know which organs are linked to which teeth and they're
mhm.
having that issue, in their body and they have a root canal in that tooth.
Yeah, I mean, you have this little, well, it could be a small infection or it could be bigger, but obviously with the root canal, you're not going to feel it as much because the root is dead. The sensory is just not there as much. But there are many, like I said, there can be markers that are elevated and those need to be addressed, and so yes. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, and just cardiovascular, I mean, let me say this, just oral periodontal health is key just as a preventative. I
Hmm.
mean, really,
Yeah. Well, and that would, I mean, your inability to detoxify because you have an infection that's affecting multiple areas would make sense as to why, you would struggle with even as you're activating GHK copper peptide and that peptide's trying, to helping with detoxification by 30%. It's struggling, like you're not noticing your body's unable to detoxify it because it's just constantly there.
yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that if your body is not strong enough to fight this infection to help eliminate it, um, it's going to be limited in its ability to regenerate. It's going to be limited, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, there's ways that we address that. Obviously, with an infection, you want to reduce that load. You want to reduce, like if it was a tooth and the infection's behind the tooth, you might have to clean that out. A lot of people think that you necessarily need to take antibiotics. That's not necessarily the case if the load is low. If it's a reduced load, you can actually support balanced immune function with nutrition and herbs. I've done it. Um, but you have to many times reduce that load by
Mhm.
cleaning it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, but if the body's overwhelmed with that kind of stressor, um, and the body's just trying to, again, the body's always trying to keep you alive. The innate intelligence that runs the body is trying to do everything it can to keep you alive. And so
Yeah.
it's operating from a triage perspective, always what's most important. And so, yeah, I mean, the body's just overall going to be functioning suboptimally with a chronic infection.
Hmm.
And actually, the suboptimal function could be contributed to the infection in the first place. You see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So, many times there's so much to say on that, but um, it's interesting when you think about like health is really a state of being. I mean, I'm just going to be saying that a lot because it is 100% true. Health is a state of being. So you have to support that state of being. It's not really so much going against that, or it's really supporting optimal function. It is supporting the state of being that you're functioning at an optimal level. That's really what's going to prevent disease.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
in, right. It's not, and it goes back to so much of what we're understanding about the energetics of things, that like when in some of the practices that I do, um, it's all about resonance, right? It's all about how you're resonating, and how you're resonating is what you're going to experience. And so, there's a spectrum of resonance, is how I look at it. And if you're resonating at an optimal level, you're just not going to be in that area of dis-ease. You're not resonating at that level. And when we're working with things, let's just say, we find areas where there's um like negative energy. Um, we might identify it, but we've identified it, but we're not staying there resonating with that. We're resonating with the solution for that way
Mm-hmm.
more than we're resonating with the problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it, right. And so it's this aspect of like resonating with the things that are right with you and the things that you want to see more of. So
Mm-hmm.
we want to find, do the things to support that. Like getting proper hydration and getting adequate nutrition and making sure we're getting plenty of sleep and making sure, we're living a lifestyle where our stress is, you know, we can manage it, right?
Right.
Like we were
Yeah.
talking before about, the exercise and doing all the things, right? You could do either extreme, it would be a problem. So if you do not enough, that's a problem. If you do a lot, that's a problem. You need to have that middle path is the way. It's the balance and everything that is the key. And so,
Yeah.
either if you go too far to either into the spectrum, the further you get away from the center, the more symptomatic and problematic things are going to be, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And especially like when if your body's unable to detoxify properly and it's constantly working, well, then there's a backlog that starts to happen to
Mhm.
where, you have one, certain condition or certain state or certain problem, and then it continues to compound because your body has a detoxification issue. It's not able to remove
Yeah.
toxins as it needs to.
Well, and I will say this goes back to the state of being.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to the state of being because when you have that kind of a challenge, the state of being that you need to be in to not be actually creating toxins for yourself is in the parasympathetic. And so, and I'll use a great example, and I see it all the time, and you can see it through diagnostics. So, when somebody is in fight flight consistently, or they're dominantly in fight flight, um, their food, every time they eat, it's just becoming toxins for them. It's not benefiting them. It actually becomes toxicity for them. So, as far as like assessing a person and really getting that person back into balance where that individual's different systems are concerned, you have to deal with nervous system dysregulation. That
Mm-hmm.
has, and so many people are dealing with nervous system dysregulation. So, when you talk about supporting detoxification, first you got to make sure that that person, every time they eat, isn't creating toxins for themselves, because that has to be dealt with first before you start really ramping up supporting detoxification.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point too, because yeah, it would just create more on the backlog and the pile on top of the pile.
Mhm.
So the body needs to be supported properly first so that
Yeah.
The detoxification can happen without like causing major Herxheimer reactions. The
Well,
nice thing
yeah.
about our technology is that you can just take it off if you're having any kind of symptomology that you can't push through or get through or that's bothersome. You just remove it. It's not anything that's been ingested that you have to just go through the process.
Yeah, I mean, the typical rules that I will give someone is, and I will always give a caveat if I'm talking about any kind of purification or detoxification, you really should only enter into that if you know your digestion's good and that box is checked and your gut microbiome is balanced and that box is checked. And then if those things are good and your detoxification pathways are open, then you can start ramping up detoxification. Then you can start promoting that because you're going to start mobilizing toxins from storage areas. And you don't want to be doing that unless those things are in a good place and your detox pathways are open. It's definitely going to go better. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
probably going to be very uncomfortable because you
Yeah.
could just be recirculating toxins
Mhm.
and you're constantly creating more toxins for
Mhm.
yourself just by eating
Which
food.
Yeah, which makes sense because the GHK copper peptide, what it does in the body is it helps to restore the gut lining. So it
Mhm.
helps to support the gut. So when you're starting with that, supporting that peptide, then, a month or two down the road, then enter, using, supporting your master antioxidant glutathione, and using our technology to elevate that by 300% is, would give your body the support it needs to support that gut lining first and then move into detoxification.
Yeah, and you cannot heal a gut lining if the gut is dysbiotic. So that's why you have to deal with the dysbiosis first, ideally, and then the gut lining can be healed,
Mhm.
once that's restored. So it's definitely, like anytime I'm working with someone, I take them through specific steps. And that way we get better results faster. And that's of course what everybody wants, right? Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but a lot of people don't know this, and they also don't even know what kind of state that they're in. They're just used to the way that they are. And so they don't realize that these things are happening or they're a factor. I had somebody come to me not long ago who he was doing some detoxification because he found out that he had a mold issue through another practitioner. And he would just did a consult with me and we talked about it. And I just happened to look at their labs that they had done. He just had a few, he didn't really have a whole lot of labs. But what I could see is that his liver was congested, and there was some evidence of improper digestion and potentially gut dysbiosis. So I basically explained to him, hey, I think you should do some additional testing, and these are the tests that we should do. And then, of course, it came back exactly what I said, which was his ability to digest food was like not happening like at all. It was the highest level of dysfunction that there is on the test. And his gut dysbiosis was significant, and there was a parasitic issue, all from the gut test.
Wow.
Yeah. And so all of that was all of that was why he was having such a hard time with detox. So I
Mhm.
said, you've got to deal with these other issues, kind of like give the detox a break, deal with these other issues, and then you can look at going back on the detox after you've dealt with these things. Right.
Yeah.
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 But I think the
Absolutely.
testing is helpful just because you're not guessing then, and then you
For
kind of know,
sure.
right? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Test,
But
don't guess.
right. 100%. It just increases awareness and kind of prevents you from, going through the discomfort of all that. And you're just going to get better faster. You just know exactly how to approach it then.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Caroline, for this. This was fantastic. So our 30 minutes went so fast.
It did. Yeah, it does go
So,
fast, especially with
yes.
a broad topic like this. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much more that we could talk about where detoxification and purification is concerned. And even just nutrition in general, because I feel like a lot of people just say this one thing. A lot of people are using nutrition for like insurance. Like, they'll take supplements for like insurance to make sure they're getting certain nutrients. But the way that we use nutrition is therapeutically. we're using nutrition to support function and to promote the healing process specifically for each individual. So it's very targeted, it's very specific. It's not from an insurance perspective, it's to support function and to support healing for an individual. So the experience with nature is just completely different. Like, I just feel like people that go through that and do it that way have so much more faith in what the creator has created for us.
Absolutely.
And it's really
Yeah.
just up to us to know how to use these things for us to benefit from. Because yeah, they have their own consciousness and they definitely contribute to our benefit. We definitely live in a symbiotic relationship with nature.
Absolutely. Yes, it was created for our good. Yes.
Absolutely. And it's sacred. It's sacred.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
has so much more healing potential than people even realize.
Absolutely. Yes, we've gotten very caught up in our allopathic model that seems to overpower everything else, and we forget about what we have been given and gifted with to utilize for our health and our healing and supporting our body's natural processes for sure.
Absolutely. And a lot of that has been forgotten, but it's still here. It's still
Mhm.
here. It's just not in the mainstream, but hopefully it'll get there by us just talking about these things.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Caroline. We appreciate your time and coming on here to do this with us. So,
Thanks, Nikki.
again, you can find her on Native Sun Nutrition, Facebook, Instagram, and she has a website. You can always find me. My business is Embrace Optimal Health, where I love to encourage people just to truly pursue health and have that be a part of your daily life. And I have a fantastic, assortment of practitioners that I work with and get to enjoy talking with like this with Dr. Caroline. And so just love getting to refer people to people like Dr. Caroline and have all the support you need and all the information you need to truly embrace optimal health, along with our amazing patch technology and being able to activate and elevate, the fountain of youth inside our own bodies. So thanks again, Dr. Caroline, and we look forward to seeing you again all on a Monday night at 8 Central Standard Time for the Life Effect. So good evening, everyone. Be
Bye.
blessed.
See you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Nikki.
Uh-huh.